You already lost. Not today. Not this morning when you woke up and checked your phone before you even let your eyes adjust to the light. Not last night when you laughed too loudly at something that wasn't funny because you needed the room to receive you well. You lost long before any of that. You lost the moment you decided that being liked was safer than being powerful. And you don't even know that's a decision you made. That's the problem. I'm not here to motivate you. I have no interest in your feelings about what I'm going to say. I'm here to perform a surgery on a pattern that is costing you everything every day, in rooms you don't even notice anymore because the surrender has become so total it now feels like personality. If you are uncomfortable already, leave. The rest of this is not for you. Niccolò Machiavelli spent the most productive years of his life studying power, not from the clean distance of philosophy, not in the comfortable halls of theory. He studied it the way a surgeon studies disease, with his hands inside the body. He watched princes fall. He watched men of brilliance become invisible. He watched servants become kings, and kings become servants. And he was ruthless enough to write down exactly why. The specific claim people avoid, the one that makes comfortable men flinch, is this: Machiavelli understood human desire by studying those who survived entirely on the management of it. Merchants of attention, masters of perception. People for whom the ability to read a room, control information, and manufacture scarcity was not philosophy. It was rent money. What he found is what you are about to hear, and once you hear it, you cannot unknow it. That is your last warning. Most people watching this should stop now, not because the content is dangerous, because they are not ready for it. They will hear the first law and immediately begin performing it for someone else's approval. They will take the language of power and use it as a new costume, which is the oldest and most pitiful form of weakness. Wearing strength because you lack it. The man who is meant to continue watching knows something is wrong with him. Not in a wounded way, in a clinical way. He has noticed quietly that he disappears in rooms, that people speak over him without apology, that his opinions get ignored and then praised 10 minutes later when someone else says them, that women stop texting back, that opportunities arrive and somehow evaporate, that he is liked but never feared, present but never felt. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Niccolò Machiavelli, the prince. He doesn't know the name of the wound. He has been told it is personality, introversion, the market, bad luck, his environment, his family, the algorithm. He has accepted every explanation except the correct one. The correct one is this: he broadcasts submission constantly, without awareness, and the world, which is never polite about these things, responds accordingly. This is the point of no return. What follows is a numbered dissection of the specific behaviors, the precise power leaks, and the surgical corrections that separate men who move the world from men who are moved by it. You will not enjoy this. That is appropriate. Watch yourself for 1 week. Track every time you explain your choice before someone asks you to. Track every time you add, "I just thought," or "I figured that maybe," or "I didn't want to seem like," to a sentence that should have ended 3 words earlier. You are doing this all the time. You are hemorrhaging authority with every syllable. Here is what Machiavelli understood about explanation that no comfort industry self-help book will ever tell you. Explanation is the language of the subordinate. It is the tongue of the man who needs permission. The prince does not explain his decree to the province. The territory does not justify its borders to the intruder. The apex predator does not apologize to the prey for its hunger. When you explain yourself unprompted, you are telling every room you walk into that you are afraid of their judgment. You are inviting them to audit your decisions. You are handing over the gavel and asking them to strike it in your favor. And most of them, consciously or not, will not, because power does not respect the man who begs for it. This is the point where most people fail. They agree with this and immediately explain why their case is different. The hidden dynamic operates like this. Every time you pre-explain, you establish a social contract in which your choices require validation from the group. You have now made the group your superior, not through force, through habit, through 1,000 small genuflections, so practiced they feel like honesty. They are not honesty, they are fear wearing the costume of transparency. The surgical correction is brutal in its simplicity. Stop completing your sentences with apologies. State your position, then close your mouth. Let the silence after your words carry the weight your words cannot carry if they are always followed by justification. Let the room sit in your declaration. Do not rescue them from the discomfort of your certainty. That discomfort is your territory. Guard it. A king who explains why he chose this road, and not that one, has shown his court that he is uncertain, that he considers their approval relevant to the decision, and that the next decision is also open for negotiation. He has not made a decision. He has made a suggestion, and suggestions get rejected. Decisions do not. The man who never explains becomes the man who never needs to. You respond immediately, every time, to everyone, to the message that barely warranted a response, to the invitation you should have let breathe for a day, to the question that would have resolved itself if you had simply not appeared. You do this because you were trained, by school, by family, by women who stopped being interested in you once you became reliably available, to confuse responsiveness with value, to believe that showing up fast is showing up strong. It is the opposite, and the people who matter have always known this. Machiavelli watched the Florentine courts for decades. He watched men of tremendous intellectual power become furniture, reliable fixtures, consistently present, consistently consulted, consistently ignored when decisions were actually made. Their crime was availability. They had made themselves a resource so dependable that their absence became unthinkable, which means their presence became unremarkable. Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. The one they fear, they do not take for granted. The one they love, they do. Scarcity is not a manipulation tactic. It is the first law of value. Every market, every relationship, every court of power has operated on this principle since the first civilization decided some things were worth more than others. Rare things are treated accordingly. Common things are consumed without ceremony. When you make yourself infinitely available, you become water. Necessary, yes. But no one mourns water. No one's pulse increases when water walks into the room. No one arranges their schedule for the chance to stand near water. You have made yourself water, and you are confused why no one is thirsty for you specifically. The hidden dynamic is this: your availability has told everyone in your life that you have nowhere more important to be, that their claim on your time costs them nothing, that there is no competition for you, and human nature, brutal, irrational, deeply animal human nature, does not value what it does not have to compete for. This applies to professional contexts with the same ferocity it applies to personal ones. The consultant who responds to every email within 4 minutes is priced accordingly. The professional who takes 2 days to respond without apology is priced as a man whose attention is worth waiting for. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. You will never read a fast reply the same way again. The surgical correction. Manufacture selective absence, not as a game, as a discipline. There are messages that do not require your voice. There are meetings where your empty chair would communicate more than your occupied one. There are invitations that gain their value only when you decline them once before accepting. The king who attends every minor gathering in the kingdom signals that his presence is ordinary. The king who rarely descends from the mountain makes the valley tremble when he arrives. Be the mountain. Stop being the valley. Your scarcity is your sovereignty. Stop giving it away for nothing. Walk into the room in your memory. Any room. The last dinner. The last meeting. The last introduction to someone whose opinion you secretly wanted. Where were your shoulders? Where were your eyes? What did your hands do when you didn't know what to do with them? How much space did you occupy versus how much space you contracted yourself into to avoid disrupting the air around other people? You are conducting a physical confession every moment you are in the presence of others. And you have no idea what you are confessing. The study of posture and physical dominance predates Machiavelli by centuries, but he was among the first to codify its political consequence. The prince who enters the room, already diminished, has communicated his rank before a word is spoken. The body does not lie. The body cannot be diplomatically evasive. The body announces, and your body right now is announcing subordination. The slightly forward lean that says you need to be closer to be heard. The eyes that break contact first, every time, in the ritual negotiation of dominance that happens in every sustained gaze between two people. The voice that rises at the end of statements because somewhere in your nervous system, you have learned to make your declarations sound like questions, to invite disagreement before it is offered. These are not personality traits. These are political positions. And they are losing positions. The hidden dynamic, dominance hierarchies are established, not through violence in civilized contexts, but through 1,000 non-verbal negotiations that most men never realize they are participating in. You are in these negotiations every day. You have been losing them for years, not dramatically, incrementally, one broken gaze at a time, one contracted posture at a time, one voice that ended as a question when it should have landed as a wall. The predator moves through space differently than the prey. Not because of size, because of certainty. The body of the hunter does not apologize for the space it takes. The surgical correction begins with one thing, and it is not a pose, it is a decision. The decision that your physical presence in any space is legitimate. Not earned through performance or achievement in that room, but prior, inherent. The posture of the man who belongs everywhere he chooses to be is not a trick of the body. It is a conclusion of the mind that the body then broadcasts faithfully. Hold eye contact 3 full seconds past the moment you want to look away. Let your voice land. Let your sentences end with the same pitch they began. Take exactly the amount of physical space your body requires, and do not subtract from it to make others comfortable. Territory defended without aggression. Space occupied without apology. Presence felt before a word is spoken. The room cannot ignore what the room cannot contain. You have been told, by culture, by popular psychology, by people who profit from your emotional openness, that vulnerability is power. That sharing the full interior of your experience makes you more trustworthy, more human, more connected. This is true in therapy. In the controlled environment of a licensed professional, bound by confidentiality, paid specifically to hold your interior without judgment. Everywhere else, it is a strategic catastrophe. Machiavelli was ruthless on this point. The prince who makes his fears visible has given his enemies a map. The commander who confesses his doubts to his officers has infected the army. The man who performs his wounds publicly has told every observer exactly where to strike if they ever need to strike. And they will need to, not because people are evil, because people are strategic. All people. Always. Even the ones who love you. The moment they know what you cannot tolerate, they possess leverage over you that they will use. Not always with malice, but always with effect. If you're uncomfortable now, understand that discomfort is the feeling of a true thing landing. Think about the last time you performed your anxiety to someone you wanted to respect you. The rehearsal of your insecurities. The catalog of your failures presented as self-awareness. Watch the dynamic in real time. They nodded. They said the correct things. And then, almost imperceptibly, they began to treat you with the particular softness reserved for things that require handling. You were handled, not partnered with, not respected, handled. The hidden dynamic is ancient and operates below the level of conscious choice. Emotional revelation between unequals creates hierarchy. The one who reveals is placed beneath the one who receives. The confessor submits to the priest, not the reverse. When you display your fractures to someone whose estimation you need, you are not creating intimacy. You are creating a power differential and installing yourself on the lower end of it. The surgical correction is not suppression. Suppression is its own weakness. The man who has never processed his internal world eventually detonates in it. The correction is audience selection and timing. Process your interior privately or in context specifically designed for it. In the world where power is negotiated, in rooms where your position is not yet secured, give only what has been earned, revelation as reward. Not revelation as introduction. Not revelation as proof of realness. Not revelation as a bid for acceptance. The castle does not open its gates to strangers. The gates open when the stranger has proven themselves worth letting in. You have been leaving the gates open to everyone and wondering why the interior feels occupied by people who did not earn entry. Walls are not cruelty. Walls are architecture. Build them. Control who passes through. You believe that if you do excellent work, the work will speak. That quality is self-announcing. That diligence applied long enough eventually becomes undeniable. This is the comfortable lie told to people whose talents must be quietly managed so they do not become threats. It is the story told to the exceptionally capable so they remain available at low cost to those with lesser ability but superior positioning. Machiavelli watched this mechanism operate at the highest levels of Florentine politics with the same cold fascination he brought to everything. He watched brilliant strategists ignored in favor of well-connected mediocrity. He watched military geniuses reduced to footnotes while lesser men built dynasties. And he wrote, with a clarity that has made comfortable readers uneasy for 5 centuries, that fortune favors not only the capable, but the boldly self-positioned. It is not enough to have great qualities. One must also know how to show them. Power without perception is a kingdom no one can see from the road. The weak behavior is the quiet excellence. The head-down execution. The faith that the room will eventually notice what you have been doing. The room is not watching the floor. The room is watching whoever has claimed the room's attention. And that person, who may be dramatically less capable than you, has understood something you have not. That competence is the foundation. Theater is the structure built on top of it, and no one lives in a foundation. The hidden dynamic. Power is a perception game as much as a capability game, and in most rooms, perception precedes capability in the sequence of evaluation. The man who walks in, already positioned as significant, gets evaluated for his competence with a favorable prior. The man who walks in as nobody gets evaluated, if he gets evaluated at all, with a prior of skepticism that his competence must overcome before it is even considered. You have been starting every room at a deficit because you believe the work excuses you from the positioning. It does not. Nothing excuses you from the positioning. The positioning is the war. The work is just your weapon. The surgical correction. Become a student of strategic visibility, not performance for its own sake. That is vanity, and it reads as vanity. Strategic visibility means that the results of your competence are never hidden. They are placed where the right people cannot avoid encountering them. You speak in rooms before you are invited to speak. You associate visibly with the things that align your name with the position you intend to occupy. You write the report, and you stand up when you present it. The general does not hide behind his troops and hope the victory credits him. The general plants his standard on the highest ground and ensures the standard is seen before the battle is over. If no one can see your kingdom, you do not have a kingdom. You have a very well-organized cave. Every law before this one has been a preparation for this one, because this is the law underneath all the other laws. This is the mechanism from which every other weakness you have flows. You need people to think well of you, not want, need. The distinction is everything. You have built your choices, your aesthetic, your humor, your opinions, and your silences around the project of managing how you are received. You modify your positions in real time when you sense resistance. You agree with people you privately disagree with, because the conflict feels like a cost you cannot afford. You perform certainty you don't feel and doubt you don't have. Whichever one seems more likely to win the room's approval in that specific moment. You are a mirror, and you are proud of it because you call it emotional intelligence. It is not intelligence, it is the most sophisticated form of surrender you have constructed. Machiavelli's contempt for the approval seeker was absolute. He called them flatterers in the political context. But the mechanism runs in both directions. The man addicted to approval is giving flattery to the world even when he believes he is expressing himself. Every modified opinion is a flattery of the person whose pushback made you modify it. Every performance of acceptable emotion is a flattery of the audience you fear. You are in a constant, exhausting negotiation with the approval of people you would never choose to follow, but whose judgment you are following anyway. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. What does it say about your intelligence that you have organized your life around winning the approval of people you have never consciously chosen? The hidden dynamic, the one that will either land or it won't, and if it doesn't, you should stop this video immediately, is this. Approval seeking does not make people approve of you more. It makes them approve of you less. Because approval seeking broadcasts the thing that makes humans, like all social animals, instinctively re-rank the broadcast of low status. When you bend to receive approval, the person watching the bending does not think, here's a man who values our connection. They think, below the level of articulate thought, in the ancient register where hierarchy is processed, here's a man whose position is beneath mine, and they treat you accordingly, and you bend further to recover the approval you lost by bending. And the spiral has no floor. You are executing yourself. Slowly, with enormous effort, and calling it being a good person. The surgical correction is the most demanding thing in this entire dissection. It requires not a behavioral change, but an ontological one. A change in the bedrock assumption about what you are. The man who does not need the room's approval is not cold. He is not antisocial. He is not performing indifference. He has simply arrived at a prior conclusion. That his value is not contingent on the room's verdict. That the room's verdict is interesting data, not a sentence. This is not confidence. Confidence is a performance. This is something older and quieter. It is the knowledge, not the hope, the knowledge that your position in the world is not determined by the quality of your performance in this specific room, on this specific evening, in front of these specific people, whose opinions you will not think about in 5 years. Practice absolute positions. State what you believe without softening the edges for palatability. Accept the silence after a hard opinion as territory, not as condemnation. Let people disagree. Do not rush to bridge the gap. The man whose position requires no defense from him is far more compelling than the man who immediately begins constructing bridges when challenged. The soldier who holds the line without flinching is worth 10 who hold it beautifully until the pressure arrives. Hold the line, without flinching, in every room, every time. There is a specific moment in the life of every man who eventually moves power, and not all men reach it, most do not, where he stops auditing himself through the eyes of others and starts auditing the world through his own. It is not a dramatic moment. It does not arrive with music. It arrives quietly, usually in a room where someone is waiting for him to perform the familiar submission. And he simply does not. He speaks, he holds. He does not explain or apologize or soften or wait. And in the silence that follows, he feels, not triumph, not pride, but the particular stillness of a man who has recognized his own territory. What Machiavelli understood, what the study of any human ecosystem at sufficient depth will reveal, is that the world is not divided into the strong and the weak. It is divided into those who have decided what they are, and those who are waiting for the world's permission to decide. The first group makes the world. The second group is made by it. You have been waiting for permission. Every single law in this dissection is a different form of that same waiting. The correction is not a technique. It is a declaration. A prior commitment made alone and never announced that you are the author of your position, not the subject of other people's assessments of it. From that declaration, every behavioral correction follows naturally. You stop explaining because the king does not explain to the province. You become scarce because your attention has value. Your body occupies its territory because the territory is yours. You reveal nothing that has not been earned because the gate is yours to manage. Your competence becomes visible because the general plants his standard, and you need no one's approval because the conclusion was reached before you walked into the room. This is the irreversible transformation. There is no path back to comfortable ignorance after this. The man who internalizes these laws does not become cold. He becomes clear. There is a difference. Cold is the absence of warmth. Clear is the absence of noise. The clear man can be warm, can be generous, can be present in full force, but he does it from choice, not from need. From surplus, not from scarcity. From a position he has built and defended, not from a position he is constantly applying for. That is the only transformation worth undertaking. Not the performance of power, the possession of it. The face in the crowd has no name. The man who rules the crowd does not need one. Everyone already knows it. What you have heard today is not everything. It is the surface of a structure that descends further than most men are willing to go. There are laws beneath these laws. There are mechanisms of power so counterintuitive, so alien to the comfort-first education you received, that they require a different kind of preparation before they can be understood without being misused. And I have no interest in giving dangerous architecture to men who have not yet demonstrated they can manage the foundation. The men who have arrived here, not those who watched this, but those who felt something in themselves shift while watching, know who they are. They do not need to be told. The shift is unmistakable. It is the particular sensation of a lock being opened from the inside. For everyone else, the subscribe button is there. The video ends. The crowd continues. You know which one you are.